All right, how many we've got?
Yeah, we're recording this, guys, just so you know. We hopefully will put this up on our YouTube channel in a couple of days. So
Okay. I
will we?
think are we good to kind of go? Are you happy
I
that we'll
think
kick
so, Beck.
off?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Why don't you set the scene?
I will set the scene. Okay, so happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this lunchtime. You're in for a real treat. What we're really hoping you're going to kind of get from this, apart from having a lovely Valentine's Day lunch, is you're going to hear straight from the horse's mouth. That is Joe Glover.
You love
About
up, love up, just a love
exactly as to how to set up an engaged community and how to build a support network for yourselves and why that's so important. And Joe's also going to talk a little bit about why he set up the marketing meetup as a safe space for marketeers to be able to kind of come together. So without further ado, I am going to pass you over to Una and Joe, and they're going to kick off the chat. Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, please use our chat function, ask questions, engage with us, etc.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bex, and thank you so much for everyone coming along today. When we were thinking about what we were going to do for our LOL session this month, obviously we kind of thought, right, LOL gives us the opportunity to pivot and give it a little bit of a glow up. So instead of learn over lunch, we are calling this our Lots of Love webinar. And the indie list is all about community, and it's all about supporting you guys where we can, through work, through community, through education. So when we thought about who would be the best person to bring along as our guest today, we thought about Joe. And Joe is, well, he's going to tell us who he is himself, because I'm just going to ask him that as the first question. But I met Joe, first of all, at the big marketing meetup in Belfast at the end of the year. And I mean, he is just one of well, he probably is the nicest man in marketing. Um, so hopefully what you'll get out today are a lot of tips and tactics on what you guys need to do to build your own support network around you. So, Joe, you're so welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today. So I'm going to start off with a question that we're going to start asking everybody who joins us. So I won't say who the hell are you, but who are you? What do you do? And why does it matter?
I like the assertiveness of who the hell are you? I think that's solid, isn't it? Um, so thank you for having me. It's honestly, I can see Diana's on the call here, but also Una, Rebecca. Like, first of all, just thank you for having me. The warmth that comes through from all of you is just beyond lovely. So thank you. My name's Joe. I started a group called the Marketing Meetup 9 years ago. I started it because I am genuinely terrified of networking, and walking into those spaces is really not an enjoyable experience. It's not an enjoyable experience for a few reasons. The first is that you walk into the space and quite often you're left to your own devices. You walk into a room and you see a bunch of people stood in circular formations that in some way you've got to kind of try and break into, to introduce yourself, to go, hey, I'm Joe. But even when you sort of build up that courage to do that, then so often people will then judge you by the budget you've got, or the job title, or the importance of your company. And this works both ways, by the way, because like the CMOs of really large brands who I've spoken to, who are just like, oh my God, I get so many people jump on me because I've got an important title. And the second I move out of that job, no one cares. And it's so silly that we judge each other's humanity by that. The third thing that is often true is like, I sort of, I've got a quiet voice. So I walk into these spaces and they are cavernous and echoey and sensory overload. And for all these reasons, layered onto the fact that I wanted to meet other marketers and I wanted to learn about marketing, then I started doing an event in a canteen in Cambridge 9 years ago. It was one speaker, a nice buffet, pizza, beer, chilled vibes, lovely stuff. But over the past 9 years, this community that started in that canteen in Cambridge, with no intention of being anything bigger, has grown to some 50,000 people around the world, 250,000 following on social media, 190 events running this year, and always with two words at the core of it, which is to be positively lovely. In fact, that's 3 words. To be positively lovely, which is this essence of like coming together to look after each other, to be kind. And actually, you know, if it's the first tip, then like so often we see that the people who are kindest, the people who give the most, are often the people who receive the most as well. And so, you know, it's something that has worked. It's a joy, and yeah, happy to help in any way I can today.
Oh, that's lovely, Joe. I mean, I can totally relate to those moments walking into a forum where there's just like so many people, and I always find myself being the person who's overly studying my notes,
Mm-hmm.
or kind of going and sitting in the back of the
Yeah.
room, hoping to God that I don't have to talk to somebody. But you as a self-declared introvert have managed to do something kind of quite extraordinary, and you've brought on guests like Rory Sutherland and Mark Ritson and Seth Godin. Like, how did you capture the imagination of those people and get them to participate?
I think the magic of Be Positively Lovely, but hopefully everything that I spoke about in that story there is that it speaks to uh, human emotions that are generally shared across, you know, humanity, without meaning to sound too deep. Um, to give an example, I remember when we ran our first event in New York. I was 20, 27, 28 or something like that, pre-COVID. It was the last event that we went before COVID. And I remember telling my dad that I was going to go to New York and I was going to go and tell people in the room to be nice to each other, to, you know, in this heart of capitalism, you know, where the dollar is the language that people speak. And I remember being stood at the front of that room, explaining very similarly to how I did just now, and then asking people to be positively lovely. And he got a laugh on the night. But then by the end of the night, you've also never heard more New Yorkers say the word lovely, which I think probably speaks to that idea, which is that you're these things are felt by humans. And so when you use the word capture the imagination, I think it's probably just a mirror. It's a mirror of what we all feel, and like not being afraid to speak to that particular truth, which is that it is a scary thing. You know, you see on these lists all the time, what are the scariest things in business? You got public speaking, and then you got networking. And so to be able to acknowledge those truths, speak to them, and provide a space which hopefully is a pleasant antidote to some of it, is a privilege.
Absolutely. And so you've clearly kind of identified the hook and the anchor
Mm.
for this movement. How do you kind of sustain that momentum? And like, what are the sorts of things, the tactics and the tools that you use to keep that community really kind of thriving and healthy?
Mm-hmm. So tactically, the marketing meetup shows up in a few ways. So we've got the in-person events that we spoke to just a minute ago. So those are 150 in-person events taking place on 5 continents, and so like that is the purest sense of um, community. Like by the way, we make next to no money on that, but who cares? You know, frankly, it's people coming together to have a good time, and they learn from one another and have this experience, and that is all about community. We have another side of it, which is about education. So that's webinars. And so that for us has been the linchpin on how we've grown the community as we have. So getting those guests, those folks coming along, have been the moments where we've seen the biggest growth in our community numbers, because they are broad reach, they're freely accessible. We have the opportunity, if we're speaking in marketing terms, to do stuff like build our newsletter, which then brings people back to the webinars, back to our in-person events, or indeed to our conference. You know, we're running our first conference in 34 days. It's actually like 33 days and 10 hours or something like that, because it's terrifying. But
Be there,
you know,
coming.
you're welcome to come.
Yeah.
But the newsletter has become that bedrock, that sort of engine of how we continue to communicate with the community. And then latterly, we've also added stuff like WhatsApp groups, We've added all sorts, but if I was to characterize it almost as a funnel, can't help it, marketing brain, you've kind of got the in-person events, you've got the webinars, which become our content for our social media stuff. They become the embodiment of community. People then are part of the newsletter, which is very value driven. And then, as I say, for stuff like the conference at that point, we can start marketing to people, which is really put on a fun event and hope they come along, and then we've got elements of retention advocacy going along all the time. Actually, on the retention advocacy piece, this is so important for freelancers, for folks building their own businesses. The profound difference in asking people to spread the word, asking people, do you know 1, 2, 3 people who my business could reach, my business could help, versus not making that ask is profound. So what we've seen with TMM is, we preload our webinars with an ask, which is, would you mind sharing this? And it is notable, the difference. And so as a point of encouragement, if that's something you're not doing already, then like tactically, it's the smallest change, but it makes such a big difference to your business growth.
I completely agree with that. What I think is lovely about what you're saying is that it all starts with kind of a very strong purpose behind what you're doing. And then tactically, I think asking for help, asking for the share, asking for people to kind of get on board is something that we don't often think about doing. And yet it's the most easy thing to do. And sometimes, when you ask people for their help, most of the time they're happy to do so.
Of course.
That's like, sometimes we're a bit slow to do it, aren't we? We're a bit slow to ask for help, because we think we're putting, people under a compliment. But we've started asking our community members to start sharing our content on LinkedIn. And once you ask, as you say, it's extraordinary to see that people actually do get on board and help you out. Just, because networking, as you said, is one of those things that is up there on the ick level of things that we really hate doing. So it's a challenge for a lot of people, even for like people who are sort of, extroverted and, a people person. It's still networking kind of feels a bit kind of slimy sometimes. But can you give us sort of some, like, your top 3 tips for networking with people, things to do to stay top of mind and build, really kind of valuable relationships, and then conversely, the things to avoid doing?
Yeah, of course.
3 of each.
3 of each. I might sorry, my dog has now decided to escape just at that moment in time. So apologies if you see a rather
All right,
large
dogs
white dog.
are welcome. You're the chairman of the board.
Yeah. So 3 tips. At every marketing meetup event, we ask people to do 3 things, and I think it probably relates to my 3 best tips for showing up for events. The first is listening. Now, I know that this is an obvious thing to say, but I think so often, whether you're introverted or extroverted, there is a pressure when you walk into these spaces to feel like you have to say the next clever thing. So, someone will be speaking and you're like, shoot, I want to sound impressive too. And so let me think of the next impressive thing while they're speaking. There's a profound difference between that and listening, which means looking at the person in front of you, taking in the words they say, and then reacting accordingly, as you would do in a normal human conversation. But for whatever reason, when we step into our networking context, we choose to abandon this. And so listening, asking great questions, caring about the human being in front of you, really makes a profound difference in terms of the quality of the conversations that you can subsequently have. And like, not to labor this point too much, but I think it's actually one of those rare things, when you have a conversation with someone who looks you in the eye and actually listens to you, and you come away from that conversation feeling valued and like you've had your opinion cared for. It's profound. So that would be the first thing. The second thing we speak about is saying hello, because hello is literally the hardest word in networking. And for some people, it's fine. You can walk up to a group of people, you can say hello, and it's no problem at all. For those of you who are more terrified, walk around those rooms aimlessly, like I do, then actually hello is the hardest bit. But once you're there, you you're kind of forced into a conversation. You're forced into having that chat because you've said hello, and it'd now be a bit odd to walk away and say hello and then walk away. So that'll be the first. So that's the next thing: saying hello, forcing yourself to say hello, and it becomes that muscle. It becomes that thing which becomes easier over time. Just like Rebecca said in the chat, these things become easier over the time the more you do it. The third thing is that be positively lovely, but let's put it in like normal human language, which is like just look to help the person in front of you. I think I had a reminder of this yesterday out of context, which was I went to go and get a coffee with a mate who I hadn't seen for a while. Like it wasn't under a business pretense, but like I just asked the question, how can I help you? And he sort of said this way, this way, this way. And then, partway through the conversation, he sort of asked the same. And there was a couple of ways that he could help me too. And we hadn't gone in under that sort of pretense of like, how can I scratch your back so you can scratch mine? But the end of that conversation, I came where I was like, shoot, I was just going to go get a coffee with a mate, but now I'm actually like, we've actually done some stuff, which is brilliant. So that spirit of how can I help you? It's not a question that many people ask, but when asked with sincerity, can make a profound difference. I think the thing with networking is people look for these short-term payoffs. But actually, it's a relationship build. It's something you do over the course of time. And so if you've got an awareness of that and sort of feel like you don't need to make a sale immediately, then I think it makes a really big difference to how your business can grow. When it comes to telling people not what to do, I get a bit itchy. And the reason is because it's not for me to judge how people should or shouldn't. I've got a view on the world, which is that like you probably don't want to make a sales pitch on the first conversation with someone, and you probably don't want to be a horrible person, and you probably don't want to speak over some people. But in some contexts, that might be appropriate. And so like I would probably step back from the what not to do. The only thing that I would encourage you not to do is to not give yourself a hard time. Like this can be a scary thing. It can be something that intimidates people, but like it's a skill. It's something people get better at over the course of time, and that's okay. So giving yourself an easy time, giving yourself a bit of forgiveness, I think that's all right.
Yeah, so I think, you talk about kindness. So there's a little bit of the kindness starts with yourself.
Absolutely. Sorry, I'm just shutting my door. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's we're not on
And
this planet for a long time, are we?
yeah,
So we
exactly,
might as well
exactly.
enjoy it.
Orla's just asked a question here, which is so true. I think we all experience this sort of feeling of imposter syndrome. So like you go into a room and you go, God, what am I doing here? Everybody else is so much better than me. Any kind of idea on how to overcome that imposter syndrome?
Um, I got lent a quote that helped the other day, which was "You deserve to be here." It was a guy called David McQueen, and there's a self-talk thing, right? Which is that thing which we can do, which said, "I don't deserve to be here. Everyone is better than me." Blah blah blah. Truth is, everyone's scared. Everyone's making it up. We're walking into these spaces and like everyone thinks it's weird. Uh, but if you know that you deserve to be there, and you do, then it's okay.
Yeah,
And so that's the start. Of course, there's so many layers to it, but like
yeah.
someone else's humanity is not anything more than your humanity. They are people. And so
I think that's so true. Like I think we all kind of deal with this issue of what does so and so think of me?
mm,
And the reality is they're not really thinking of you. They're thinking like what everybody thinks of them.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
think it's kind of like just trying to let that go and just, as you say, remind yourself that you deserve to be here.
yeah, absolutely,
Um,
absolutely.
Could I ask a quick question, Una, just about that on the imposter syndrome, Joe? Like, is that something that you would have dealt with early on in your career, or are you still dealing with it?
Well, no, I think I'm in a pleasant place of quiet confidence right now.
Great.
But I think it works on different levels and different situations, right? I don't think many people are confident or unconfident as people in their totality. I think most people will be confident in the kitchen, but unconfident on a rugby pitch, and we have these opportunities to, rather than sort of label ourselves as this totality and sort of say, I am an imposter all of the time, sort of say, I am uncomfortable in this situation right now because I might be unfamiliar with it. But I might be better elsewhere. And really, that's been similar to my journey in the sense. So, to directly answer your question, in that I am very confident, by relative terms, on something like this because I do it every week. And, I'm quite confident at public speaking. But ask me to get involved in a hurling match, I'm going to be, not very good. And
You'd be
really
scared. You'd be very scared,
yes,
though.
exactly. And so I think my journey of confidence is in some very specific routes, in some very specific ways, through experience and character. And everyone will have versions of that. And for me, the last thing I can add into that is like, specifically with the quietness, like I've kind of learned to love that a little bit. I used to hate, I still hate going to like loud bars. I mean, I know that people have opinions on going to restaurants with loud music, but like going to loud bars and spaces like that because no one can hear me. But in a context like this, it's like, embrace it, speak quiet, people lean in, cool. Like I like that about myself now, and maybe I didn't always. And so, yeah, it's been a journey, to answer your question directly, Rebecca.
No, but it's great. Thank you. I think it gives people a bit of hope. Sometimes if it's something that you are battling, to break it down like that into kind of areas of your life, and then maybe practice on certain things and see how you can improve your confidence over time. And know it's going to come.
Yeah, it will. It will, all right, or it won't. And sometimes it won't. And you go, cool. Didn't like that. Don't want to do that again. That was horrible.
Yeah. Pick your battles.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I when I saw you in Belfast in November, you walked into the room and you were authentically quiet and reserved, and you were on your own, even though you were a guest speaker. But you were walking around that room on your own until Diana Byrne caught hold of you and
So Diana saved me.
you. But we all started to gravitate towards you after that, and you were still, you weren't the gregarious kind of life and soul of the party. You were still that kind of quiet, kind of lovely person. And actually, Anne Claire, made a lovely comment here, which is it's about, being fine kind of with maybe feeling like a bit of an outsider. You don't actually have to fit the mold in order to belong or connect with people. And I think, I sort of think, freelancers tend to, be kind of quite individual in that way. And it's lovely if you can kind of identify that and just be that,
For sure. For sure.
Um, I think, one of the things that I'd love to kind of explore with you is this idea of like how networking might have changed in the last few years, because obviously, look, COVID has changed the game for everything. Like, has it radically changed how networking takes place? Are there any sort of trends that you're seeing coming through in networking?
Um, I'm a simple person, so I like simple things, and so like the rest of us, you can see the growth of stuff like bounce, ping pong in London, or the darts, in these sort of like fashionable places. I think probably less about trends and more about finding where you are comfortable is probably the biggest thing, because I think there's a bevy of options, right? You know, if you want to go to that loud salesy thing, there is going to be a space for you. If you want to go to a quieter, more chill place, there's going to be a place for you. If you want to play games, there's going to be a place for you, you know. And so
and she said, sometimes I go up to bed early and David.
so there's going to be these spaces for you, right? And so I would say the greatest trend is a general enthusiasm to reconnect in one way or another, and we tend to see it. So you see it in the numbers now at the Marketing Meetup. Like the first couple or few months of the year are usually when we get the most signups for our events, and it's because everyone does this sort of New Year thing, which is like, oh, I'm going to get out there again, you know. 2024, you know, I hid in my office, but 2025, it's going to be a big year for networking. And, you know, having done this for 9 years now, then I've seen it happen again and again, you know, but I think there is a more consistent enthusiasm for this and a recognition of the importance of this.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd say most broadly, the biggest trend is it's here and people want to be part of it. And there are plenty of options to make it happen too.
I think what we're seeing is a lot more people are choosing self-employment as a way to kind of have more agency over their lives and over their careers, and then therefore maybe the networking opportunities are evolving to reflect those kind of diverse sort of experiences and diverse kind of needs, you know, like, so if you do want to kind of throw darts at a wall, or in fact throw axes at a wall, which is
Yeah.
starting to see emerging quite a bit.
Yeah, and I think you raised such a good point for this group in particular, right? Which is there is the trend, the tech change. You know, we are all having our heads filled with AI stuff right now, you know, and I am neither pro nor against. It is what it is, you know, it is here, you know, it is our reality. And so there is no sense in fighting it for the sake of it. There is understanding it, there is adapting to it, etc., etc. And if you allow your head to be filled with it too much, you will become quite sad. But what you actually have the opportunity to do is realize what continues to make us special in our work, in our lives, and it is our humanity. And so, like, doubling down in that space, sort of realizing that those human connections are actually going to be the thing which continue to make you future proof, to grow your career, to create new opportunities. I see this thing only becoming more important.
Absolutely.
And so probably there is that element too. I think there is that willingness to do it, but I think also the technology makes it, I never want to say mandatory. I avoid could, should language, but you know what I mean. You know,
Yes.
it's important.
I think it's almost like an inevitability about, you know, that this needs to rise to the surface in order to kind of remain connected. One of the things that, you know, obviously for a freelancer, they often kind of work remotely, and like working on their own for long periods of time, which means that you don't always have that kind of water cooler moment where you can kind of share some of your frustrations or share some of your ideas, or, you know that thing where you want to kind of write somebody a really kind of, you know, spiky email, and somebody goes, just hold on a second.
Talks you back from the brink.
Yeah, exactly. What, you know, so they don't have this kind of built-in team to kind of bounce those ideas off. What do you think are the daily habits that people can kind of build in that allow them to kind of overcome that sense of isolation and maybe build up a sense of connection?
Let me give an example from my personal life.
Yeah, that would
So
be.
I've got two kids. I've got a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old. so a 4-year-old girl and a 1-year-old boy. We moved to this area maybe 5 or 6 years ago. It feels like a lot sooner. I am fortunate that I've gone down to a 4-day week. I've gone down to a 4-day week, so I can spend an extra day with the kids each week. But for those of you who are parents or no parents in the room, then you'll know that it's a hard thing to do, you know, to raise these kids and bring these humans up. So Monday is my day with the kids, and it turns out that everything is freaking closed around my house on a Monday, like soft plays, cafes, whatever. And so quite often I was finding myself sitting in my lounge with one kid on my head and another one on my shoulder, just being beaten up for 9 hours, like consistently. It was hard yards, you know, and like Mr. Introvert here actually doesn't necessarily want people bouncing on his head for 9 hours. You know, like I quite enjoy some space sometimes. I think what I actually realized, and you know, it's quite a funny way to end up at this conclusion, but I think it's a really important thing. And I experienced this in my business as well. It's like this stuff can be freaking lonely. You know, you can sit in your office day by day, have your head filled by LinkedIn posts, social media posts, etc., etc. And you're like, bloody hell, I am just lonely, you know? And so when you ask the question, you know, about like, how do you do it? Well, like, let me answer what I did, which is something I've already referenced, which is I just picked up the phone and dropped a text to a mate who I didn't actually know that well, but like I knew him kind of. I was like, you seem cool. You know, you seem all right type of thing. Do you just want to grab a coffee? It was just making that first move, that proactivity. I'd say everyone in this chat right now is doing it, right? You know, you've joined this possibly to learn some stuff, but I'd hazard the guess that most of you would look at the other faces in the room. You may have dropped a couple of people already a LinkedIn connection. You may have said hello to each other, but you would have taken that proactive step. You would have taken a moment to go, cool, you look cool. Like, do you want to hang out? Do you want to say hello? Do you want to have a half an hour meeting? Do you want to check in? It's not mad stuff, but like sometimes it's the stuff where you can stew on it for weeks and weeks. And like it just takes that first point of contact. And sometimes it also takes a bit of vulnerability. I'll do one last story before I shut up on this, which is that when I started my business, so started in 2016, went full time in 2019, I was running events all around England at the time by myself. And so I'd take it from Cambridge to Newcastle, Cambridge to Norwich, Cambridge to London. There's a delivery guy in my garden, so that's the thumbs up. Cambridge to wherever. And I remember getting on the train one day, a 4-hour train from Cambridge to Newcastle, and I had to switch at Peterborough. Got on the train at Peterborough. And you know how every public transport has like someone who nobody wants to sit next to? Well, on that day, I was that person because I just started crying. It was because I was so freaking lonely. And so again, in that moment, it was like, just drop a text to a group of mates. And within a couple of minutes, I had a couple of phone calls and it made me feel so much better. And so like, if you don't have those people in your phone right now, then it's kind of your responsibility to go and find them. And the best piece of advice that I can offer in that thing is like, go somewhere where people are doing the thing that you would like to do. So if that's playing football, if that's knitting, if that's having coffee, if that's having a chat, go to somewhere where the people who are doing the thing that you want to do are doing it. And then, you know, that's how these relationships start. So yeah, I feel the loneliness and it's crap. And so you can, but you can circumvent it.
That's so lovely, and thank you for being so open, because like, you know, sharing that vulnerability is kind of something that we don't tend to do, because we always want to be kind of like, oh, you know, business is great, life is great, you know, I'm doing really, really well. And in fact, you know, you don't want to be that sort of feel like a loser. And certainly, like, I spent 15 years as a freelancer, and I would say half the time I felt like a total loser. And but you didn't always really want to kind of give off that vibe, you know, because you'd sort of think, God, you know, I'll never get any work if I kind of give in to that.
Yeah.
But I think it's kind of, it's almost like back to what you were saying about those networking events, is like the hardest thing to do is to say hello. And
Yep.
you know, I think, you know, we get emails and messages from people all the time, you know, talking about things that Rebecca's just telling me I'm a winner. Yay, thanks, Rebecca. But you know, we've got people contacting us all the time and they're finding things really, really tough at the moment, like really, really tough. And there's a lot going on that isn't helping that, you know, in terms of, you know, kind of revenue rulings about, you know, tax and so on. I mean, in the UK, it's the I-35 conundrum. But, you know, I think one of the biggest frustrations that people are feeling right now is ghosting. And
Mm.
it seems to have become the norm. Like we get it with a lot of clients, you know, they come and they ask us for X, Y, and Z, and then we don't hear from them anymore. And, you know, so people have a few chats and they have a few meetings and they might write a really kind of brilliant proposal. And then it's just like crickets. And you follow
Mm.
up 3 or 4 times and then it kind of gets embarrassing and you kind of feel, God, I can't really do anything anymore. Is do you have you had any experience of that, and how did you deal with it if you did? Like, did you
Yeah.
kind of go, why are you ghosting me?
I know, when like you go, am I just getting old and like becoming too direct now? And so there probably have been some emails which have been like, why
That's
aren't you
funny.
replying? But like to all are in the chat, it's absolutely not you. It happens to everyone, and like whether it's freelancers or footsie companies, these things, like, it is kind of the way of the world to a certain extent. I think there's a couple of things, right? The first is maybe we just go, this is the way of the world, and we try not to get too excited. I mean, it's a hard lesson, but it's a strong lesson, which is the deal is not done until the ink is dry, and sometimes even then, it's not. And those are easy words to say, but until you've lived sort of someone saying, we're going to give you 100 grand, and then they turn around and they don't, um, or 1 grand or £10, whatever it is, then the deal isn't done. And so there is an acceptance there. Maybe that's part of the answer. The second is that, of course, email is never enough. We have these tools at our disposal, right? LinkedIn message, email seems to be the gravitating, where the gravity goes to. But if the deal is lost, what are you going to lose? What are you going to lose? And so a moment of creativity, a handwritten letter, a carrier pigeon sent through someone's window, um, it almost doesn't matter. But I think if this thing matters enough to you, and like, we have to have an awareness and a respect that things change in people's businesses, redundancies, strategy changes, etc., etc. These things happen. It's business. But if this thing means enough to you and you think you're a good fit, and you want to do something truly special, then an email isn't truly special. A LinkedIn message isn't truly special. These things are procedural, to be expected. But you have an opportunity there to create an opportunity out of nothing. And then, yeah, absolutely, as Eddie says in the chat, you've got the opportunity to protect yourself up front as well, right? So if you're doing free consultations, maybe charge for those. You may see a reduction in the amount of consultations that you get, but maybe that's a first sign of a first indication. So, like, thinking about that flow, how people get in touch with you, whether you're going to take the call, how that call goes, putting some structure around that, putting some structure around your follow-up materials, etc., etc. Even very, very simple things like, if I don't hear from you in the next week, what should I do? At the end of a 30-minute call, then maybe that's the type of thing that transforms those particular conversations. But it's a huge deal. It happens. It really does. But there's a multitude of opportunities that come off the back of it, I guess.
Um, Joe, I wanted to kind of leave some time at the end for some people to ask a few questions, but I think there's one thing that I would ask is like for anyone on the call today who's feeling kind of a bit disconnected, maybe they don't have the support network that they need, and they're kind of maybe unsure where to start. What do you think are the kind of the actions that people can take right now to change that?
Um, I love that quote from, so by the way, that doing the things, going to the places where people are doing the thing that you want to do, that came from my mate the other day when I was asking in the friendship context, but I think it works more or less everywhere. And one of the most sort of beautiful traits in humans that I see is proactivity. And so that sense that I am going to do a thing and I am going to do it and I'm going to take control of this and this is on me, um, feels like a lovely thing. And that's not like a hard lesson because I know how it feels to not have the strength to do that thing today. And I know how it feels to sort of not feel like you can. But I also know what happens on the other side when you do. And so, when you've got the time, when you've got the strength, maybe not when you got the time, because nobody's got time. But when you got the strength and doing the thing, taking the first step, whatever small it may be, is probably where I'd start.
Yeah, lovely. Joe, talk to us about what your plans are for 2025, because we obviously know we've been talking to you about the marketing meetup and your plans for Ireland, and we're really excited about continuing our conversation and helping you to continue that journey. But for those on the call who aren't aware of what are the plans, tell us what are you looking for 2025 here in Ireland?
So we ran our first meetup in Dublin 2-3 weeks ago. I know it was gorgeous. Like, just people are so nice, so blooming nice, and the same in Belfast. It was just delightful. As I said, um, Diana here in the chat is the nicest person I've ever met in my entire life, and
Yeah.
but that's sort of mirrored across like every interaction. So we want to run more events in Dublin. We want to run events in Belfast at some point.
Oh,
And
that's
so,
cool, isn't it?
yeah, it's wicked.
It's very cool. It's like the vibiest place in this island.
It's great. I am not going to get into what's top or bottom of various things because I think I will get in trouble. But like, um, yeah, we want to run more events in Dublin. The other thing and Belfast. The other thing to say is that we run weekly webinars as well. So like those are free to access for whomever at any point. And so whether it's the recordings to watch afterwards or to join live Tuesdays at 2 o'clock, please do come to them because they're free and they're helpful and there's nice people there. So yeah, you'd be very welcome.
Lovely. And the events themselves, Joe, how does it actually work? How is it funded? Because I know you kind of you extend the kindness
Yeah.
through the model. So talk to us about that.
So the events are sponsored. So we take relatively small sums, so we don't make a loss on the in-person events. The webinars are getting 1,500-1,600 people a week sign up for them, so those are larger packages for larger businesses who want to get in front of lots of marketers at the same time. But for the local events, then would love local involvement to cover the cost of the pizza and beer is pretty much where we're at with those. So yeah, that would be lovely if anyone's got a couple £100.
Well, we certainly like to help out. And I always find that when you say free beer, a lot of people are
Yeah,
very
bizarre.
exactly. Um, Just a couple of questions coming through here. Yeah, Lisa wanted to know if she could connect with everybody on this. So I would say, guys, just drop your LinkedIn profile into the chat button, and let other people connect with you. We can't share out the names of everybody attending because of a GDPR issue. But if you have any specific questions, drop them into the chat box here. We've got a show on radio here, Joe, called Liveline, and it's on every day at, like, kind of 1:45, and the host is a guy called Joe Duffy, and it's Talk to Joe. So this is your opportunity to talk to Joe. But maybe just before, because I think, success obviously doesn't come overnight. So you've been doing this for like 9 years now.
Mhm.
And I mean, what you've created is just like, it's just so beautiful. It's very heartwarming. But success obviously doesn't come overnight. And you must have made a few big doozies of mistakes. Can you talk to us about any of those? Because we've all made loads of mistakes, haven't we? So it's always nice to hear when somebody's really successful that they've actually done something really stupid as well.
Freaking hell. It's like, yeah. See, this is a light moment. I'm going to turn it into a not light moment, but let me do that, because like I think it's important. So I'm relatively public about stuff like mental health and around sort of depression and anxiety and stuff like that. So I'm going to answer this in an upbeat way, so then it doesn't appear to be downbeat. But there we go. And I think part of the root of that is wanting to have it all, and so be the best dad in the world, be the best business owner, do the millions, be everything for everyone, show it wherever I can, have a Greek Adonis of a body, all those sort of things, and just absolutely burning myself out, and getting to the point of taking medication for anxiety stuff, and that's a sucky situation to be in. That's not where you want to be in life. And so you're very kind in sort of pointing to success and stuff like that, but I think I will, maybe that's not the best sentence, but like I think we're just not very nice to ourselves sometimes. And that's a shame, isn't it? And whether you consider yourself successful or not, just being a little bit nice to yourself is probably a principal mistake that I made, and it led me down a place which wasn't where I wanted to be. And so I can speak about sending emails to the wrong list. And I can speak about putting hello first name instead of people's actual name. But like the principal mistake that I made was being horrible to myself. And I think that positivity probably unlocks quite a lot in life, and developing the muscle of seeking positivity is something I'm working on really, really hard right now. And I extend that to myself. And I think that's probably the biggest thing.
Lovely. That's really nice. I love that. I think, yeah, like the shit talking we do to ourselves is really kind of quite brutal. And often, sometimes I kind of say, Jesus, if I spoke to anybody the way I talk to myself sometimes,
Yeah.
I could expect a kind of a slap in the jaw.
No one could do that to you.
But Bex, do you want to jump in? Do you have any kind of observations or questions that you'd like to ask Joe before we kind of wrap it up?
I mean, I'm dying to hear some of the gossip. Is that really bad?
Oh yeah.
I'd love to know, of if you're allowed, spill the beans, tell us who did you love? I mean, I know, I'm sure you loved everybody, right? But is there anything you can tell us about any fun stories with some of, I suppose, the marketing legends? Because at the end of the day, they're all pretty big characters. Some of them are not the most PC in the world.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I would say that the defining characteristics of most people who I've spoken to have got to those lofty positions. And this isn't a broad statement, because I don't want to discount folks who experience like neurodiversity and stuff like that. But for the most part, the people who I see who are like in these mega positions, you know, the Mark Ritzons, Seth Godins, etc., their emotional intelligence is just off the charts, and they're generally curious, personable folks who you don't carry themselves with a large sense of ego. You know, they listen as much as they speak, and are generally nice people to be around. I mean, Mark Ritson is an example, right? You know, he has a reputation of being a hard speaking, you know, you referenced it there, Rebecca, you know, not necessarily PC sort of character. Genuinely a really nice guy. Genuinely. Seth Godin, highlight of my career, probably. Well, one of them. I had the most chill interview I've ever had in my life with him. And he was smart. I mean, he was way smarter than me. But like, you know, he was just like, it's on YouTube now, and you'll hopefully just, it was almost meditative, you know, it's just like, it was really nice and it was curious. So like, I can't think of anyone who's made it to our stage, which, you know, is not everyone, but anyone who's sort of made it to our stage has genuinely been a good person. I can't think of many times where people have been actively terrible, which is maybe a good life lesson, right? That 99.9% of people are lovely. So
I would say you probably get the best out of people as well, Joe, because you are so authentic and yourself. And so people do open up to you, which is why you're seeing that side of them when you interview them.
You're kind. Well, thank you.
It's true.
Working on taking the compliments. So I think
I know it is hard. You're doing a great job.
Yeah. We are due to have Rory Sutherland on as a guest this year. He was at a conference here in Ireland called Kilconomics,
Okay.
which is in Kilkenny, where I live, and I was at it with the lovely Diana Byrne, and she made me storm the stage and love bomb him or fangirl him, and I just asked him if I could interview him, and
Yeah.
said yes. And I'm
Yeah.
just like thinking, is this a pinch me moment? Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and just so lovely. Now we haven't managed to get a date in the diary yet, but it's happening.
He's great. He's
Yeah.
so
What a brilliant point.
there's one small correction there, which I'd say to Rory, and we've had him on a few times, and I'm hoping to likewise do something with later in the year. But you don't interview Rory; you just wind him up and let him go. And so like, you know,
Zero prep required.
and I say this because this is something that appeared to other folks as well. It's in the YouTube comments of my first interview with him, which is like, the comment is something like, it's quite funny trying to watch the interviewer try to get a question in. And like, Rory is amazing in that way. He's just the most endlessly interesting people. So you'll have a fantastic time, no doubt.
Can't wait. I can't wait. Look, Joe, I'm gonna try and wrap it up now, and I want to obviously thank you for coming along and being just Mr. Lover. You knew I was going to do it like a few times throughout the course of today's session. But I also want to just say to the people who joined today, you know, we set the indie list up not just to help you find work, but to help you be part of a like-minded community, get support where we can. We're always going to be flying the flag for you guys. You know, we're still a really tiny team. There's just like Bex and Amanda and myself, and sometimes we don't get to you as quickly as we would like to. but we're trying to do more and more all the time. We've got our closed group on LinkedIn where you can introduce yourselves, get connected to other people, reach out, say hello, try and kind of connect with people. Bex was talking about when she was a member of the indie list that she had an accountability partner, another indie lister, and they just kind of kept in contact with each other to support each other. So you know, the forum is there for you to not feel alone and isolated, and we're really, really aware that it is, you know, freelancing is great, but it's not a walk in the park, and there are parts of it that are really, really challenging, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to smooth out some of the pain points associated with this freelance life and allow you to do, you know, when we see people who have chosen self-employment, we kind of tip our hat because we know it takes courage and chutzpah, and we really admire you for it. So thank you for everybody and for coming along today, and just from Amanda and Rebecca and myself, Joe, you're just the best. You really are. And thank you so much for being so lovely and so gracious and just being really open and vulnerable, because that's really, really important. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Joe. And spread the love, people, on Valentine's Day.
Totally. Yeah, for sure. So people will be probably tuning out now, but we've got some lovely comments, and I think people have really, really appreciated it. So yeah. So Joe, can you stay on for a few more minutes and have a chat with myself and Diana about, or are you running?
Can I run? I'll email you separately because I'd love to.
Yeah, perfect.
Can we do 1:30? I might just ask for.
Super. Yeah.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Brilliant.
Thank you so much,
Thanks, everybody.
Guys, thank you
Take
so
care.
much. Okay. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.